The impetus to writing this article was given by Professor Arleta Adamska-Salatsiak, Bilingual Lexicography, Translation Dictionaries. And I'm very pleased to have Professor Arleta in the audience today. In this paper, discussing many other issues connected with bilingual lexicography, Professor Adamska-Salatsiak talks about the role of the bilingual dictionaries in the teaching of foreign languages. We've been trying to raise the same issue in our country for several years, and this paper helped us realize that probably Georgia is not the only country where this issue is high on the agenda. But in order to highlight what we want to communicate with you today, I have to talk about the problem of semantic anisomorphism between languages, and to talk about this problem the way we were confronting it during our work on the Comprehensive English Georgian Dictionary, and also how we tried to solve this problem for over 3 decades while working and while bridging the divide between the semantic systems of the English and Georgian languages. And then I will try to show why we think that why we treat that it's very important to address the issue of semantic anisomorphism in a bilingual dictionary in order to produce an adequate bilingual dictionary, and why such dictionaries are important for teaching foreign languages, and why they are important for preserving lexical richness of languages and thus linguistic diversity. Drawing on the works of famous lexicologists and lexicographers who wrote about this problem, so as I mentioned, we try to show the problem the way we had to confront it in our bilingual project. This is my favorite definition of equivalence, linguistic equivalence, given in the Dictionary of Lexicography by Harton and James. The relationship between words or phrases from 2 or more languages which share the same meaning. Because of linguistic and cultural anisomorphism, translation equivalents are typically partial, approximative, non-literal, and asymmetrical, rather than full, direct, word-for-word, and bidirectional. Their specification in the bilingual dictionary is therefore fraught with difficulties, and recourse must be made to surrogate explanatory equivalence. I don't know how better this problem can be expressed in just one short citation. Talking about semantic asymmetry between languages and between English and Georgian, George also studied this problem between European languages like English and German and English and Dutch and other languages, but unfortunately the format of 20 minutes does not allow us to speak about all this today, but this is all reflected in our paper, so you can look at more examples later. Semantic asymmetry is discussed in our paper at the lexical unit level, that is the level of individual lexical semantic variants of a polysemous word. Generally, 3 possible types of equivalence can exist between interlingual synonyms. By interlingual synonyms, we mean words as if representing the same meaning, expressing the same meaning in different languages. This can be complete equivalence, partial equivalence, and zero equivalence. So, complete equivalence is fairly rare. Zero equivalence, on the other hand, is extremely frequent, and it's not only culture-specific terms, but it's also numerous concepts of one language which are not lexicalized in the other language. But on the other hand, partial equivalence, which is actually a different degree of overlapping of meaning of 2 seemingly similar words in any pair of languages. So this overlapping may be very small or more considerable. This partial equivalence is what poses the greater problem for bilingual lexicographers, and therefore we decided to tackle this problem in our paper. As for the zero equivalence, in our practice at least, It has not posed some insurmountable problem because we used to resort to the methods of explanatory dictionary and just give explanation to it. As for the partial equivalence, just to give example, English rough and Georgian uheshi seem to be very good equivalents. But on the other hand, while making an entry for English-Georgian dictionary, it's impossible to find two examples where uheshi will be translated by the same, rough will be translated by the same Georgian word. So each time we need for one and the same polysemous meaning, of course. So we are discussing it on the level of one and the same polysemous meaning of a word. So if we look, I will show the examples later, but if we look at the definitions, the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary on Historical Principles, defines this meaning of rough like this: having a surface diversified with small projections, points, bristles, etc., so as to be harsh or disagreeable to the touch, not even or smooth. And Georgian uheshi, looked up in the explanatory dictionary of the Georgian language, does not specify why the surface is not smooth or even. English meaning is broader because it allows different reasons for being uneven, like projections, points, bristles, even, etc. So there may be other things. Therefore, English rough can be used with such different nouns as rough road, let's say, or rough edges, or rough skin, or rough cloth. And in this case, in Georgian, we need totally different Georgian equivalents, like Ogro-Chogrovza, rough road, literally bumpy road, rough edges, literally uneven edges, rough skin, chortlianik, literally calloused skin, and so on. Such examples can be cited endlessly from our project, and I'm sure that from any bilingual project. Another, just very briefly, another example of restless. In English, it says unable to stay still or be happy where you are because you are bored or need a change. Oxford Advanced Learner's Dictionary. So, because we have reasons that somebody is bored or needs a change, so this adjective can be used in such context. The children had been indoors all day and were getting restless. The audience was becoming restless, meaning that they are bored. After 5 years in the job, he was becoming to feel restless. He was beginning to feel restless, meaning that he needed a change. But Georgian, as if corresponding word, mousuenari, cannot be used to translate the above-cited examples. And in each case, we need different words or different word combinations. Literally, the audience was losing patience. And Samushaus literally could not lay his heart to the work. As I've told you, any proficient linguist knows that this is linguistic regularity, and this is somehow to be addressed in a bilingual dictionary. How we treated this problem in our English-Georgian dictionary for more than 3 decades. We did not know even the name of Ladislav's Gustav back in 1980s when we project, and the Board of Editors of the Comprehensive English-Georgian Dictionary developed different techniques for dealing with the problem of equivalence back in the 1980s, independent of the lexicographic theories and practices of European lexicographers, which we familiarized ourselves with later. So we introduced the so-called equivalence of meaning and translational or contextual equivalence. At that time, we did not call this equivalent of meaning. We just had our internal slang word for defining what we started calling later equivalent of meaning. So, ogro, chogro, bumpy, ustor, mastoro, uneven, calloused, coarse, they are contextual equivalents of rough in Georgian. And they provide good translation in different contexts. But what is the equivalent of English rough? So this is to be created artificially as surrogate equivalent in the terminology of Hartman and James. And we developed different techniques for creating this so-called equivalent of meaning. Sometimes this is described at length in our paper, but this was sometimes a small definition type equivalent, surrogate equivalent. In some instances, this was a combination of some contextual equivalent accompanied with definition, small definition, and so on. So this is described more at length in our paper. To our mind, so equivalent of meaning and translational contextual equivalence, and we developed technique of combining equivalent of meaning with numerous translational equivalents in an entry in order to be able to describe the English meaning on the system level, language system level, and also to describe the correspondence between interlingual synonyms on the contextual level. To our mind, this is exactly what Ladislav Gusta says in his paper, Translational Equivalence in a Bilingual Dictionary. So he describes the entry for the transitive verb frayed from the English-Georgian Dictionary of Wilson. And he writes that the entry, after the entry word frayed, it is there is a column, and then you get these concrete examples like frayed cuffs, frayed collar, frayed rope, the carpet is badly frayed, my nerves are frayed. And this is accompanied with super Russian translation. This is what he writes. But then he adds, would it not be useful if he, the user, were offered not only these excellent, absolutely colloquial translations, but also a Russian explanation of what frayed at least roughly means, say, damaged by wear and tear. This is actually equivalent of meaning, which he could use in absence of a better, smoother Russian expression. This reflection brings us back to the point where we started. There is a tension between the translational equivalent of the entry word and the explanation of its meaning. There are certain similarities between what we call equivalence of meaning and translated cognitive orientations, prototypical lexical patterns, translational starting points of Albrecht, Neuwirth. It turns out that translation dictionaries of the right kind can have the same generating power as defining dictionaries, writes he, and we fully agree with this statement. Now going back to teaching foreign languages, I will again quote you, Arleta. So when I read this, I was really very happy, because this is exactly what we thought and what we are fighting against in our country. It is genuinely puzzling how methods which explicitly condemn the use of the native language in the classroom, effectively banning the bilingual dictionaries, could ever have been considered beneficial in the teaching and learning of foreign languages. And really big thank you, Arleta, for writing this. Because, you know, if we all say this, maybe teachers of English and also ministries of education will pay more attention to the methods of teaching foreign languages. And there is something very important what Arleta says later. It is necessary to make foreign language learners realize the semantic asymmetry between their respective native languages on the one hand and the foreign language they study on the other hand. And I must admit that during numerous sessions, which I had training sessions with teachers of the universities and at school, with the numerous meetings with students, and I teach lexicography at the university, and with the competitions in lexicography that we arrange for our students at the university and school children, I can state with the whole responsibility that neither teachers and nor school children or students are aware of this problem. I don't know how it is in your countries, but in Georgia, no teacher is aware of this problem. And, it is very dangerous if a learner of a foreign language thinks that there is a symmetry between a word in a foreign language and a word in its native language. If a learner thinks that English rough and Georgian Ukheshi are the only correspondence and there is a symmetry between them, I think this will not lead the learner into the proper understanding and in-depth study of a foreign language. While studying a foreign language, it's important to bring lexical, grammatical, and syntactic information from a foreign language into correspondence with the respective lexical, grammatical, and syntactic information from one's native language. And this is better and more efficiently achieved by means of bilingual translation of dictionaries than by means of explanatory ones. And again, here I mean not simplistic dictionaries, which the internet abounds in, where only one equivalent is given for a foreign word, headword, but it is achieved by dictionaries where the problem of linguistic anisomorphism is addressed and solved properly. Well, I don't mean that what we described, that combination of different levels of equivalence on the level of meaning and on the level of context, is the only solution. But we have 30 years of work on a big comprehensive project, bilingual project, and we have a product which is online and which is used by translators and learners, and the dictionary is there, it performs its function, which means that maybe this method can be considered as at least not considered erroneous. The only thing is to raise the awareness in this country and somehow raise the awareness of the importance of realizing that a word, one English word, may be translated with numerous words in your native language and vice versa. And another consequence, to my mind, of these teaching methods and of sometimes quality of bilingual dictionaries or total ignorance or total ignoring of these dictionaries into the study is that certain stratum of vocabulary and lexis of the Georgian language, which we can observe here, is gradually disappearing. Just to give you a short example, English delicate has numerous equivalents in Georgian into this meaning. Delicate, slim, elegant. Numerous. For delicate figure is translated by one Georgian word, delicate fingers by another Georgian word, delicate wine by the third Georgian word, and so on and so forth. And because the students and learners do not realize this anisomorphism, they start dropping the big stratum of the vocabulary. For instance, my students do not know the beautiful word "tzertzetakenari," which is only used mainly of a woman's body. A delicate body is tzertzetakenari, so they don't know this word, they don't use it anymore. Or the beautiful word "tlili," which is used for fingers, and literally means chiseled fingers, which is a very nice Georgian word. I call them words with very narrow profile, which can be used only in respect to one word, and it's not general, which can be used with different classes of nouns. For instance, the same rough cloth in Georgian has the equivalent which can be used only with cloth, or a word which can be used only with skin. And this is the richness of a language. So I think that this is the richness of a language, and if a dictionary does not address the problem, and if teaching of a foreign language does not address this problem, I think that a certain stratum of the vocabulary falls out of use. And well, one may claim that any words in any language, words fall into disuse and become archaic. We know this very well. But with this approach, I think we are facilitating this process of certain stratum, which is the richness of our languages. They start to disappear, to fall out of use, and instead we get this horrorisms like delicaturi cremi, Georgian delicate cream, which is this false cognates. We know that this is a problem. Another problem which is not addressed in learning foreign languages, unfortunately, and even translators sometimes are not. And our Georgian media abounds in such pearls, and delicaturi, that's completely outrageous, delicate washing. And Georgian delicaturi, which is from the Russian language, delicaturi has nothing to do with delicate, because it entered the Georgian language via Russian. And it is Georgian delicaturi is considered tactful. It has nothing to do with delicate. Therefore, you can imagine delicaturi, that's for delicate washing in Georgian, which is completely outrageous. So, just to sum up what we wanted to communicate to you as bilingual lexicographers. This is that the problem of linguistic isomorphism, particularly partial equivalence, is a very serious problem which is to be addressed seriously in a bilingual dictionary. It is to be addressed seriously in teaching foreign languages, because without this we will not achieve in-depth and high-quality study of foreign languages, which we want to achieve, and we will lose richness of our vocabularies, and thus we will lose linguistic diversity. Maybe I'm dramatized, but this is how we see it in future. Thank you for your attention.